Hello people. So one of the things that I have wanted to talk about for a short while, haven't really been able to get round to, is the idea that the G self is the centre of ethics, morals, all that kind of stuff. And to do that, I was going to draw off a few philosophers, which I'll just very briefly show here because this is not the actual point of this video. I want to make a secondary point here. But here we have Stefan Molyneux's chart, and his G self goes straight up to the throat. Here we have Jordan Peterson's chart. His G self goes up to the throat, and the flavour of that specific channel is, I think, very specific to things I've seen Jordan Peterson say in relation to ethics. We have Gad Saad, who has a channel here, and I could contrast that with Stefan Molyneux. And we have a woman called Carla Rueckert here, and this is a bit more of an indirect thing. It doesn't talk directly about ethics. I've seen other people with this channel, but I generally think that people with the G self going to the throat here do have a message that includes ethics. Recently, and I was obviously quite happy with this gives me a bit of an insight into that potential video in the future, I found someone without the G self, and also someone that's philosophy very much reflected a lack of the ethical principles, and that's Nietzsche. So we can see with Nietzsche's views, it was very much how compassion is folly, in a sense. Compassion is a tool that the weak use to justify their existence, in a sense, is what Nietzsche said. That might be butchering it a bit, but we can see here how that might have come from the 3420, and we can see here that there's no G self. There's another concept I just shortly want to talk about, in that I believe, or I have experienced, that channels and gates going on the same stream, so if we think about this 5818 through to the 4816, all have a kind of flavour that flows in the person's life, even if all those channels aren't defined by the individual. What I mean by that is I've very much noticed this 58 here in my own chart has the same flavour, has the same events connected to it, has very similar themes as the 48 here, even though I don't have the 18 and the 16. But remember, the 18 and the 16 would be filled in by other individuals and by transits occasionally. This is potentially relevant. But stepping back then, saying if the G self is the centre of ethics, then what about the emotional centre here? This is the only channel, I think. Obviously the ajna and the head don't go through the G self, but I think this is the main centre that doesn't connect through the G, really. I mean, it's very, very unlikely that you're going to get someone with the 3740 through to the 5125, and the ego is obviously an energy centre. It's not a processing thing, it isn't a filter, it's pushing of its own accord. Of course, we could go through the 659 and then up through one of the tantric channels, but the point is, it's not easy, and it's always being buffered by another energy center. And so I'm wondering, does the emotion care about ethics? Now, that's a strange thing to say. The emotion is very caring. It seems to have a very good side to it, but that's an interesting question. And I think that potentially that is why you get the 3-day waiting period with the emotion, because the emotion doesn't care about ethics. So it will think and feel things on its emotional wave that are not ethical. Anyway, it's just a tentative thought, and thank you for listening.